Intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge, who's been working the story from Washington, D.C. today and bringing us some details. So, Catherine, one of my first questions for you is, this now involves different states. And at the high level in D.C., what are they talking about in terms of the tone and the texture of this investigation?
Well, Harris, when you have crime scenes spread across multiple jurisdictions, it often kicks it up to a federal level for some degree of coordination. We reported earlier that really there's a joint lead here between the FBI and the Secret Service. But perhaps even more importantly, it goes to the idea of possibly multiple individuals. And if it's a single individual, a great deal of premeditation to build the devices and then mail them. I want to spend a few minutes here talking about the device that was recovered at CNN. We learned at that news conference that it was a live explosive device, but it also had some white powder. White powder, from my experience, can have a couple of different functions. One, if it's just inert, is designed to slow down the entry of forensic teams, bomb techs, and first responders, because if it's something like anthrax, it can be easily aerosolized. Even if it's an inert powder, it can have the effect of causing a larger evacuation because it can get up into the air conditioning systems. That's also what we saw at CNN. So it's a way to amplify the impact of the explosive device. And we also heard from the head of intelligence at the NYPD, John Miller, at that news conference, I think another important building block of this investigation, that they saw with the device that was recovered in Westchester, New York, targeting former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, that it had a number of similarities to the device that was recovered here in Washington targeting the former president. Here's John Miller.
Late last night, we received word of the package that was delivered to the Clinton residence, or was intercepted before delivery to the Clinton residence in Chappaqua, New York. That is also going to the FBI lab. After that, we were notified by the Secret Service that they had received a nearly identical package in Washington addressed to the Obamas.
We also heard at that news conference from the New York State officials, the governor, Andrew Cuomo. In the middle of that news conference, you'll recall that he confirmed that his office had also received a suspicious package and that it was being investigated. He anticipated, he told reporters, that there would be more suspicious packages in the coming hours or days, indicating that he believes this may possibly be just the first wave of what has really been described as some sort of terrorist-style incident. I would also add that if there's another building block to focus on, it's that initial device that was discovered at the home of George Soros. Earlier today, we were told that it was built by somebody who seemed to have some experience with explosives, and the question for investigators is whether they are all connected, whether it's part of an individual or a group's effort to target individuals on its face, senior Democrats, or whether this is a coincidence.
Or a
device
copycat.
Found, right, or a copycat. But I would add that the number of devices, I can't emphasize this enough, even if they are crude, this takes time. It takes a safe space to create the devices and then to also get them into the postal system. And now we have that other layer of the white powder. Again, this shows premeditation. If it's inert, it shows that they understand that it will slow down the first responders, people trying to evacuate the area, because they're trying to determine whether it's something that's lethal or not, and whether they have to have that broader evacuation, which is exactly what we saw at CNN this morning, Harris.
Well, and it effectively, no matter, you know, the level of whether or not it's lethal, it's terror, because you've now disrupted.
It absolutely amplifies the impact.
Hey, before I let you go, because we popped up on the screen while you were talking, the device that actually went to Columbus Circle. There it is now. And we haven't said it in the last little while, so we want to say two things about this, Catherine. One, you see the name John Brennan there.
Right,
so I want you to comment on that. You also see that it went into a facility, CNN, where I understand he is now an analyst or some sort of contributor, not even with this network, but it was a wider type of mailroom. It wasn't just CNN, it was residences, it was retail offices. But let's start with the Brennan.
Well, John Brennan is the former CIA director under President Obama. He resigned. He did not serve under the current president. He's been a very vocal critic of this presidency. I think I want to leave it at that in terms of why he was targeted. But there does seem to be an arc where the individuals so far who have received suspicious packages are sort of high-profile Democrats, if you will. I'd also just
we
note
don't know the motive.
Yeah, that's we don't know the motivation, but I would also note, if you look at the package, one of the telltale signs you're always told to look for is excessive postage. See that?
And you can clearly see that on the screen.
You can clearly see that there. So, and also excessive, if you will, handling or packaging. You see there appears to be a heavy yellow tape that's around the package, and then the excessive postage. I'm not going to go into a lot of details about packages I have received over the years, but I can tell you that these are the telltale signs that the feds tell you to look for to flag something that really could be a problem.
That is very helpful information, because the see something, say something has to have some specificity in terms of some of this. Catherine Herridge, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bringing in now New York Congressman Pete King, member of the House Homeland Security Committee here in New York. Great to see you. Thank you for being along. Do you know any more about this device that was found at the New York governor's office? He brought it up, and I don't think anybody was expecting to hear that one had just been found at his office.
No, that was the first I became aware of it, that the governor's office may have also received one of these devices. I have been talking to some people who are peripherally involved with the investigation, and it appears the consensus is, but it's an early consensus, that it is the same source sending these out. Now, that's not exhaustive, that's not final, but there's a number of similarities, and that's really as far as I can go. So I think that's the premise that they're sort of operating on, but I think all options are still open.
All right, so we've talked with FBI and other federal authorities, we've talked with local authorities. Yours is special because it's Homeland, and I would imagine that there's probably a list somewhere out there that you can look at and see if this matches someone that might be on a list.
They would have that. Definitely Homeland Security would have it. The FBI would have it. Also, the NYPD has a fairly extensive list. At first, of people who could possibly have done it, and also of potential targets also. So you can be sure that right now the counterterrorism unit, the NYPD, is examining this exhaustively, looking into every aspect of it. I'm sure there's also counterterrorism officers out at various locations around the city, either actually watching or either that or warning the people in those facilities as to what to look for. So, no, this is a full court press. And one thing we learned since 9/11 is once something like this happens, everyone springs into action. And there's also so much more coordination. So there'll be an exchange of information. I mean, you saw how quickly the NYPD was on the scene, and then we're going to have the FBI and the Secret Service, and Homeland Security will certainly be involved. So this is going to be a full court press. The state police here in New York, especially now if the governor's office is involved. It's but it is not the terrifying thing, but the concerning aspect about this is that this many of these devices were able to get through, at least if you put in the mail and coordinated. So it shows that there is a level of coordination here. Now, whether or not the person is an expert bomber, the fact is he was pretty clever and pretty shrewd as far as being able to, he or she or they, able to put all this together. If it does turn out that they're all, coming from the same source. And right now, you would have to think that that's the case.
You know, right above you is video here in New York City, and we talk about being resilient on the East Coast because we deal with this sort of thing. Sometimes it doesn't even make national news. They'll shut down a bridge or a tunnel. I know, coming from Jersey, and we'll find out later in the day they had found or were looking for something. Today, though, was really a trigger point, if you will, emotionally for people as they saw so many people out in the middle of the streets of New York. And I would imagine when D.C. and Florida and other places experience these devices, they look to New York and leaders like yourself to kind of give them a word. So I ask you now to put on your hat that is almost like that make a strong hat again, because you have been through so much here in the city.
Right. Yeah, listen, one thing we learned in New York is you have to stay tough, you have to stand strong, you can't be giving in to these people, you can't show any fear at all. The fact is, law enforcement, whether it's in New York or whether it's in Florida, the fact is they are trained and ready for this. This is not 9/11. This is a time where everyone, again, an alarm goes off, and they know exactly what to do. And the worst thing we can do is to go hide in our basements or hide under our desk or call people up on the phone in some kind of panic. The idea is be strong. You see it in New York. People are walking by. They're walking by almost brazenly to show that they're not intimidated by this. And that's, whether it was London during the 1940s when they were being bombed, or it's New York after 9/11, or New York today, and I'm sure it'll be the same in Florida. Everyone has to be tough. We cannot show any fear at all. All that will do is encourage more attacks. Have faith in law enforcement with FDNY, NYPD, first responders all over the country. If everyone does what they're asked to do, we are going to come out on top and we're going to prevail.
Representative Peter King of the great state of New York, thank you for that word.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Harris, thank you.
Absolutely. Secret Service has intercepted a suspicious package carrying potential explosive devices sent to Hillary Clinton at her Westchester County, New York home. Brian Yanis is live from that scene outside the Clinton residence in Chappaqua, New York. So, Brian, we have just in the last little while seen the scene outside of Debbie Wasserman Schultz's home down in, or not home, but offices in Sunrise, Florida. This is our first opportunity now to hear from you outside of the Clinton residence. Tell us about what the response is there.
Good afternoon, Harris. Well, there was an increased police presence, and there still is. There were helicopters in the air. There's about a dozen cameras that were here in Chappaqua, New York. The Clintons have been living here for about 18 years. The home behind me is it's behind trees. It's in a cul-de-sac, so they actually bought the home next to them so that the Secret Service could better protect the Clintons. That was back in 2016. There's an 8-foot fence around the home. Now, from what we understand, this package was stopped by a screening professional, screening technician at an outside facility here in Westchester. Is that this package, this device, did not get anywhere near the home of the Clintons. Now, President Bill Clinton was home at the time. The former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is in Florida campaigning with Donna Shalala, who is running for the House there. She was the former DHS Secretary. Take a listen to what Hillary Clinton said earlier today about this device.
It is a troubling time, isn't it? And it's a time of deep divisions, and we have to do everything we can to bring our country together. We also have to elect candidates who will try to do the same.
Now, Chelsea Clinton, the daughter, also tweeting that she was grateful to the women and the men of the United States Secret Service. Thank you. Now, this is all happening just 15 minutes away from the home of George Soros. That package was delivered to the mailbox there on Monday. I was just there yesterday reporting that, again, that house is just 15 minutes away. That device was placed inside the mailbox of a compound of sorts in which the Soros home was really acres behind that security gate. Now, investigators are trying to figure out whether or not that device was placed by hand or whether or not it was delivered via the mail to the Soros home. And I think that could play a part in the investigation that now is happening nationwide, as they are now looking to see how that device made it into the mailbox, because a security agent there at the Soros home is the one that found that package, brought it to a wooded area, and then the ATF and FBI safely detonated it. They are looking at surveillance video at the Soros home to see if they can catch anything there in that video as to whether or not this was hand-delivered or brought through the mail. One last point, Harris. We now know that the NYPD, as a point of precaution, have now added more security to the offices of Hillary Clinton in Harlem and on Broadway. This is all part of what's happening all across the city, just an hour south of here in Chappaqua. They have added those 5 heavy armored units, from what I understand, counterterrorism units throughout the city, and increased patrols at all the iconic spots, and of course the media offices. Harris.
Yeah, you know, the ones on Broadway and just clear here. I mean, I'm sitting on the mezzanine. We've got 2 floors of glass here, and you can see some of those vehicles. We just had Representative Pete King on. We know that that the targets are being hardened here in the city, if you will, as there is increased. I mean, you can see the security here. Brian Yanis, thank you for that report from upstate New York. As you were talking about just kind of tying things together from the Soros package on Monday, now fast forward to where we are today and bringing things together in this investigation.